The sheer audacity of it stole my breath. I lost everything when the HOA, fueled by corruption, burned my mansion to the ground. But they never, ever imagined I'd use my millions not just to rebuild, but to buy their precious organization and turn their lives upside down. Would you have the courage, the sheer grit, to take down a corrupt HOA that ripped your life apart? Let me know in the comments below where you're watching from. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, the bright pink violation notice clutched tight in my fist, feeling like a brand. I stared, dumbfounded, at the woman standing rigidly on my doorstep. Brenda Sterling, clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield, offered a smile so cold it could chip ice. Her eyes, however, remained utterly devoid of warmth. "Rules are rules, Mr. Blackwood." Her voice dripped with faux politeness. "Your prize rose bushes are 2 inches over the height limit. Pinecrest Gardens has standards, you understand. We must maintain them. 2 inches? After 20 painstaking years building this house? 20 years of grueling overtime, meticulous planning, agonizing over every single detail. My 3-story dream home, a testament to perseverance, stood proudly against the skyline. The garden alone, my sanctuary, had taken 5 years to perfect. And those roses, my late wife Helen, had planted them. They were award-winning, vibrant symbols of her love. "Really? 2 inches?" I asked, my voice tight with disbelief, gesturing toward the immaculate blooms. "Can't you possibly make an exception? These were my wife's." Brenda's smile tightened, becoming almost predatory. "Exceptions, Mr. Blackwood, lead to chaos. You have exactly 48 hours to trim them. Failure to comply will result in a $100 daily fine." Speechless, I watched her march stiffly down my cobblestone walkway, pausing only to snap photos of my imported Italian fountain with her phone. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Something told me this was only the beginning. I was right. The next morning, my front door looked like a bulletin board from hell. 5 more violation notices stuck there like unwanted parasites. Unapproved water feature, non-conforming mailbox design, excessive holiday decorations. I read them aloud, my morning coffee growing cold and bitter in my hand. Excessive holiday decorations? It was February. The only decoration was a single, tasteful heart wreath from Valentine's Day I'd simply forgotten to take down. My neighbor, David Chen, waved cautiously from across the street. He hurried over, glancing nervously toward Brenda Sterling's house down the block. "Ah, I see she's found her new target," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What is her deal?" I asked, bewildered. David lowered his voice even further. "She's gunning for HOA president next month. Old Mr. Henderson is retiring. Every election cycle, she picks a few homeowners to terrorize. Makes her look tough, you know. Shows how strictly she'll enforce the rules." "That's utterly insane." "Welcome to Pinecrest Gardens." David patted my shoulder sympathetically. "My advice? Just comply, seriously. She made the Johnson family's lives a living hell last year until they finally gave up and moved. Sold their house for way under market value, coincidentally, to her brother's development company." His words hung heavy in the air. That afternoon, feeling defeated, I spent hours trimming Helen's beautiful rose bushes that didn't need trimming. Each snip felt like a betrayal. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across my perfect lawn, I admired my stunning home. The fountain bubbling peacefully, my vintage Corvette gleaming in the driveway. Why would anyone have a problem with this? Predictably, the next morning brought 3 more violations. Vehicle must be garaged, my classic car. Excessive water usage, the fountain. Improper trash can placement. It was collection day. This was rapidly escalating beyond ridiculous. It felt like a calculated siege. Frustrated, I called the HOA management company. "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Blackwood," the representative said with practiced indifference, "but all violations are verified by our inspection team. You can certainly appeal at next month's meeting. However," she added coolly, "in the meantime, the fines will continue to accumulate, I'm afraid." My attempt to reason with Brenda directly proved disastrous. She answered her door wearing an official HOA polo shirt, like some kind of paramilitary uniform. "I'm just doing my job," she stated flatly, making no move to invite me in. "If everyone simply ignored the rules, property values would plummet." "My house is the most valuable one on the entire block," I pointed out, incredulous. Something ugly flashed in her eyes then. Resentment? Pure, unadulterated jealousy? "Size isn't everything, Mr. Blackwood," she retorted sharply. "Conformity creates harmony." 2 agonizing weeks and $1,400 in bogus fines later, I attended my first HOA meeting. I was shocked by how few neighbors actually showed up. Brenda, though not yet president, sat prominently at the board table, her influence palpable. The current, older board members seemed to constantly defer to her. When I finally got a chance to address my growing list of violations, the acting president, clearly intimidated, cut me off brusquely. "Compliance first, Mr. Blackwood, then appeals." Driving home, simmering with frustration, I noticed a familiar car parked in Brenda's driveway. Her brother's, the developer David had mentioned. I recognized him instantly from his smug face on local development company billboards. A cold dread began to creep up my spine. This whole situation felt profoundly off. That night, sleep eluded me. Driven by suspicion, I pulled up the property maps of Pinecrest Gardens online. My lot was, by far, the largest in the entire community, perfectly positioned at the neighborhood entrance with breathtaking, unobstructed mountain views. It was, undeniably, a developer's dream. Suddenly, the pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The relentless targeting of specific homeowners, properties mysteriously selling below market value, Brenda's brother conveniently swooping in to purchase them. I dug deeper, poring over old HOA newsletters. Over the past 5 years, 7 homeowners had moved out following aggressive, unrelenting violation campaigns orchestrated by Brenda. And all 7 properties? Now owned by Sterling Development Group. "So that's the game," I muttered, the cold reality washing over me. The very next day, I hired an independent home inspection company. Electrical, plumbing, structure, everything passed with flying colors, exceeding all codes. I immediately installed high-definition security cameras, documenting every square inch of my property. When Brenda inevitably showed up a few days later with yet another violation, this time claiming absurdly that my grass was a quarter-inch too tall, I was ready. I filed a formal complaint with the State Housing Board. Then, I confronted her calmly but firmly. "Selective enforcement of HOA regulations is illegal, Brenda." Her usual smug smile faltered for just a second. "We enforce the rules equally." "Oh, really?" I countered, holding up my phone, "because my documentation, including time-stamped photos and video, shows at least 5 neighbors with the exact same grass height, identical mailboxes, and very similar fountains. Yet, curiously, only I seem to be receiving violation notices. Are you perhaps targeting certain homeowners, Mrs. Sterling? Specifically, those whose properties might be attractive to, say, a developer?" Her face flushed crimson. "Are you threatening me?" Her voice rose, sharp and defensive. "Not at all," I replied coolly. "Just letting you know I'm fully aware of what's happening here, and I'm documenting everything." She turned and left abruptly that day. For a glorious week, silence. No new violations appeared. Foolishly, I thought perhaps I'd won. Then, the notice arrived. An emergency HOA meeting. The sole agenda item? Discussion of eyesore property at 1024 Whispering Pines Lane. My address. At the meeting, Brenda was prepared. She presented a slideshow filled with photos of my home, deliberately taken from unflattering angles, making my beautiful residence look ominous and neglected. This monstrosity is destroying our community's character, she declared dramatically to the handful of residents present. Property values will suffer unless we take decisive action. Several board members nodded gravely in agreement. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her brother, Mark Sterling, sitting in the back, intently studying architectural drawings. When it was finally my turn to speak, I approached the podium, clutching a folder of documents. "Before we continue," I said, my voice ringing with calm authority, "I'd like everyone to see these official property assessments. They clearly show my home has actually increased neighboring property values by an average of 12% since its completion." I passed out copies. Also, here are photos of 16 other homes in Pinecrest Gardens exhibiting features very similar to those I've been cited for, features that have received precisely 0 violations. A ripple of murmurs spread through the small room. Brenda tried to cut me off, flustered, but I wasn't finished. "Furthermore," I continued, my voice rising slightly, "I've brought copies of public sales records. These show a disturbing pattern. Properties recently targeted by this HOA board with aggressive violation campaigns consistently sold significantly below market value. And strangely enough, all of them were purchased by Sterling Development Group." Mark Sterling suddenly became intensely interested in the contents of his phone. Several homeowners turned, staring directly at him. "This isn't relevant," Brenda snapped, her voice laced with panic. But it was too late. The seeds of doubt had been sown. The meeting adjourned without any vote being taken on my property. As I walked to my car, David and Linda Chen hurried over. "That was incredibly brave, Arthur," Linda whispered, her eyes wide. "But please be careful. Brenda doesn't give up easily. She plays dirty." "I'm not worried," I said, trying to project confidence, though the genuine concern etched on their faces made me uneasy. That very night, an email notification popped up. An emergency HOA inspection was scheduled for my home tomorrow morning to check for potential electrical hazards. I immediately called my lawyer, who advised me to document absolutely everything. I double-checked my newly installed security system and went to bed, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. I couldn't have possibly known then how right I was to be concerned, or that within 24 hours my meticulously built life would literally go up in flames. Continue. The pounding on my door jolted me awake at precisely 7 a.m. Peeking through the peephole, I saw 3 men in Pinecrest Gardens HOA polo shirts standing ominously on my porch. Brenda Sterling hovered behind them, a viper ready to strike. "Mandatory safety inspection," the tallest one announced gruffly, flashing a badge that looked suspiciously homemade. My lawyer advised no inspections without proper written notice delivered well in advance. I replied firmly, keeping the door chain-latched. My heart hammered against my ribs. Brenda pushed forward, her face set in a mask of false concern. "The email sent yesterday was your notice, Mr. Blackwood. Potential fire hazards require immediate attention." "Fire hazards?" I repeated, incredulous. "My entire electrical system was certified just last month by licensed professionals." "A concerned neighbor reported seeing sparks from your roofline," Brenda said smoothly, refusing to meet my eyes. "We're just being cautious for the good of the community." I knew it was utter garbage, a blatant pretext, but causing a scene would only play into their hands. Fine, I conceded reluctantly, unlatching the chain. But I will be recording everything, and I will be accompanying you every step of the way. The so-called inspectors spent an excruciating hour poking around my house. Their focus, strangely, remained almost entirely on my main electrical panel and circuit breakers in the basement. One of them kept trying to disappear into rooms alone, until I firmly insisted on staying with each of them constantly. Brenda, meanwhile, took photos of everything, including personal items in my bedroom and office that had absolutely nothing to do with electrical safety. "Your solar panels aren't up to code," she declared suddenly, staring intently at my roof through the master bedroom window. "They were installed by certified professionals and fully approved by the city inspector," I countered, my patience wearing thin. "City approval doesn't mean HOA approval," she snapped back. "They're reflective hazards. Neighbors have complained about the glare." "Which neighbors?" I demanded. "That's confidential HOA business," and she retorted smugly. After they finally left, a wave of profound unease washed over me. Something felt deeply wrong about that entire charade. I immediately checked my security camera footage. It showed one inspector lingering far too long at my electrical panel, his body conveniently blocking the camera's view of exactly what he was doing. My blood ran cold. I called David Chen immediately. "David, has anyone from the HOA ever inspected your home for fire hazards?" "Never," he said instantly. "That's not even within their authority, Arthur. Electrical inspections require licensed professionals, not HOA goons." Parsi, my unease intensified into genuine fear. I decided to take serious precautions. I spent the afternoon meticulously backing up all important digital documents to multiple secure cloud servers. I photographed every valuable item in the house for insurance purposes. I even packed an overnight bag with essentials: toiletries, clothes, medications, important papers. A chilling premonition whispered that I might need it. Later that afternoon, I installed additional, more discreet security cameras and motion sensors around the property's perimeter. While working outside, I noticed Brenda and her brother Mark parked down the street, blatantly watching my house. They sped away the moment they realized I'd spotted them. The menace was palpable. I briefly considered moving my vintage Corvette to a secure off-site garage, but decided against it. That would show fear. Instead, I called my insurance company again, wanting absolute confirmation of my coverage. "Everything looks perfectly in order, Mr. Blackwood," the agent assured me cheerfully. "Your premium is paid up, and you have full replacement cost coverage." "Including fire?" I asked specifically, needing to hear the word. "Absolutely," and he confirmed. "Fire, flood, natural disasters, you're fully protected." That offered a small measure of comfort. That night, I had dinner with the Chens. Linda seemed particularly nervous. "We should have warned you more strongly about Brenda sooner," she said, pouring me more wine, her hand trembling slightly. "She's just been getting worse, more brazen. Last year, the Williams family, they had their entire prize-winning garden destroyed overnight. Just ripped out. No proof it was her, of course, but everyone knew. My security system should catch anything like that," I assured her, though a sliver of doubt remained. David leaned forward, his expression grim. "Arthur, it's not just petty vandalism anymore. Tyler Jenkins, remember him? He stood up to her publicly at a meeting last summer. 2 weeks later, while he was away on vacation, a pipe mysteriously burst in his upstairs bathroom. Water damage destroyed almost everything he owned, and wouldn't you know it," Linda added bitterly, "he just happened to sell his ruined house to Mark Sterling's company at a massive loss." Their story sent a fresh wave of fear through me. I had trouble sleeping that night, tossing and turning, every creak of the house sounding like an intruder. Around 2 a.m., a shrill security alert shattered the silence, buzzing violently on my phone. Motion detected at the main electrical box. My heart leaped into my throat. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone, hands shaking. A hooded figure was clearly visible, tampering with the external breaker box. I called 911 immediately, whispering the details urgently. But by the time I cautiously made my way downstairs, grabbing a heavy flashlight, they were gone, vanished into the night. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They took a report, shone flashlights around, but admitted there wasn't much they could do without identifying the person. "You might consider hiring private security, sir," the older officer suggested sympathetically. Frustration warred with fear. The next morning, I had my electrician come out first thing. "Someone's definitely been messing with your breaker box," he confirmed grimly, showing me clear signs of tampering, stripped wires, pry marks. "I've fixed it securely now, but Arthur, you need to report this officially. Whoever did this could have caused a catastrophic fire." I filed another police report, this time armed with the electrician's professional assessment. The officer seemed more concerned, but reiterated that without clear evidence pinning it on a specific individual, prosecution would be incredibly difficult. Later that same day, as if on cue, I received another official notice via certified mail. My accumulated HOA fines had inexplicably quadrupled. The stated reason? Continued non-compliance and failure to rectify safety hazards. The total now stood at an astronomical $10,000. The audacity was breathtaking. I tried calling the management company again, but predictably got nowhere. My lawyer advised that while the fines were almost certainly illegal and contestable, fighting them through the courts would be a long, arduous, and expensive process. That evening, Brenda Sterling hosted a community safety meeting at her house. Naturally, I wasn't invited. David, however, attended and texted me updates throughout. "They're talking about your house, Arthur, calling it a hazard to the neighborhood." Another text buzzed moments later. Brenda's showing doctored photos again, making it look completely run down. Then the bombshell. Her brother Mark just suggested that problem properties like yours should be subject to community acquisition, maybe even through eminent domain if necessary. "Arthur, they are actually discussing forcing you out." I spent that night frantically researching HOA laws and eminent domain statutes. Legally, they couldn't do what they were threatening, but legality didn't seem to matter to Brenda Sterling. That didn't mean they wouldn't try something else, something worse. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Eleanor Vance, a quieter board member I vaguely recognized who had apparently missed the recent controversial meetings due to health issues, appeared hesitantly on my doorstep. I needed to warn you," she said quietly, refusing my offer to come inside, constantly glancing over her shoulder. "Brenda has somehow convinced half the board that your home is a genuine liability. There's serious talk of placing a lien on your property if you don't pay those outrageous fines immediately." "That would never hold up legally," I scoffed, though my stomach churned. "Legal doesn't matter. If they succeed in making your life so miserable, you're forced to leave, Mr. Blackwood," Eleanor replied sadly. "I've seen it happen before." Before turning to hurry away, she slipped a small USB drive into my hand. "Security footage from the clubhouse camera," she whispered. "You'll want to see the board's executive session from Tuesday night." The video evidence was damning. It showed Brenda and the complicit board members openly discussing my property. Her brother Mark was present, confidently displaying architectural renderings of a new luxury condominium development, situated exactly where my house currently stood. Once Blackwood's out of the picture, Mark was saying smoothly on the video, we can easily get this entire section rezoned. The return on investment will be substantial for everyone involved. Enough was enough. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was a calculated criminal conspiracy. I immediately copied the video and sent it straight to my lawyer, who agreed we now had grounds for serious legal action against the HOA board and Sterling Development. I decided I couldn't wait for the legal process. I had to go public. That very evening, I attended the city council meeting, determined to expose what was happening in Pinecrest Gardens. Several supportive neighbors came with me, including the Chens, and bravely, Eleanor Vance. After I presented my evidence, the pattern of harassment, the selective enforcement, the illegal fines, the tampering with my electrical system, and crucially, the damning video footage, the council members seemed genuinely shocked and concerned. A senior city inspector promised a thorough investigation into the Pinecrest Gardens HOA's practices. For the first time in weeks, a flicker of hope warmed me. Maybe, just maybe, I was finally making progress. I returned home late, exhausted, but feeling cautiously optimistic. But as I pulled into my driveway, a cold dread washed over me. My entire security system was offline, dead. I tried rebooting it from my phone app. Nothing. Moving cautiously, heart pounding, I entered through the garage, grabbing a heavy flashlight and a baseball bat for protection. Everything seemed eerily normal inside, quiet, too quiet. But the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Something was terribly wrong. Instinctively, I checked my circuit breaker panel first. It had been switched off, manually thrown into the off position. As I flipped the main breaker back on, restoring power, I heard it, a strange, insistent crackling sound coming from upstairs. Then a strange, acrid smell hit my nostrils. Smoke. Panic seized me. I bolted up the stairs to find my home office already filling with thick, choking smoke. Flames were greedily crawling up the curtains, reaching for the ceiling. I grabbed the fire extinguisher, but the chemical spray barely made a dent against the rapidly growing inferno. Sobbing, I called 911, screaming my address, then rushed frantically through the smoke, trying desperately to grab what few irreplaceable items I could. A photo album, my wife's jewelry box. By the time I stumbled choking out the front door, gasping for air, flames were visibly erupting from the second-story windows. Neighbors poured out of their homes, faces etched with shock and horror. Some were already on their phones, calling for help. As the sirens wailed, growing closer, I stood helplessly on my perfect lawn, watching 20 years of dreams, memories, and hard work turn to ash before my very eyes. The heat was intense, the roar of the fire deafening. And then, through the flickering chaos and gathering crowd, I spotted her, Brenda Sterling, standing across the street, bathed in the hellish orange glow. She wasn't calling emergency services. She wasn't offering help or showing a shred of concern for her neighbor. She was smiling. A small, chilling, triumphant smile. Alternative fire scenario, blending in the away at conference elements seamlessly. My blood ran cold. "Stephanie, what's wrong?" I asked, standing awkwardly in the bustling convention center hall, 3 hours away from home, trying to present my new software to potential investors. "Arthur, there are people from the HOA walking around your property right now." Linda Chen's voice was a panicked whisper over the phone. "They say they're doing some kind of inspection, but nobody told us anything about it." "Did they have permission to enter my property?" I demanded, my presentation forgotten, heart racing. "Brenda Sterling is leading them," Linda confirmed, her voice tight with fear. "She has some official-looking papers and keeps pointing at your house." I quickly ended the call and immediately phoned David Chen, who lived on the other side of my property. No answer. Frantically, I tried the local police non-emergency line, explaining the situation. Sir, if they're from your HOA and have documentation stating they can conduct an inspection, there's not much we can do remotely, the dispatcher explained patiently. You'd need to check your specific HOA agreement regarding emergency access. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the dense HOA contract stored on my phone. And there it was, buried in tiny print. Emergency inspections related to potential safety hazards could be conducted with 24-hour notice. Notice I absolutely had not received. I tried calling Brenda Sterling directly. Straight to voicemail. I left a furious, urgent message demanding they vacate my property immediately. A wave of helplessness washed over me. I was trapped here, hours away, while they were potentially inside my home. 3 agonizing hours later, my car finally turned onto Whispering Pines Lane. I saw the flames before I even reached my house. Sickening orange and red tongues licked violently at the evening sky, consuming my beautiful mansion, my dream, my sanctuary. Fire trucks lined the street, hoses snaking like accusing serpents across my once perfect lawn. No, 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 I screamed, jumping out of the car while it was still rolling to a stop. I tried to run toward the inferno, toward the remnants of my life, but a firefighter grabbed me, holding me back firmly. Sir, you can't go in there. The structure is unstable. It's too dangerous. My legs buckled. I collapsed onto the pavement, the rough asphalt scraping my knees, watching helplessly as 20 years of my life's work crumbled into fiery ruin. Memories, photos of my parents, Helen's cherished belongings, my rare book collection, all turning to ash and smoke. Through stinging tears, I spotted her across the street. Brenda Sterling, arms crossed, that same small, chilling smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Not a trace of shock or sympathy on her face, just satisfaction. What happened? I croaked, my throat raw, when the fire chief approached me sometime later, his face grim. Preliminary investigation suggests it started electrically, sir, he said, shaking his head sadly. Looks like a major fault occurred in your main circuit breaker. Inside? I asked numbly. No, thank God. You live alone, right? Yes. Alone, I whispered, staring blankly at the smoking skeletal remains. But that's impossible. I just had the entire electrical system upgraded last month, certified. It passed every city inspection with flying colors. The chief gave me a sympathetic look. Sometimes these things just happen, sir. Faulty wiring, freak occurrences. We'll conduct a full, thorough investigation, of course. I spent that night in a sterile, impersonal hotel room, numb with shock and disbelief. By morning, I'd contacted my insurance company, clinging to the desperate hope that I could at least rebuild. Then came the second gut punch. I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Blackwood, the insurance agent explained, his voice tinged with discomfort, but your policy coverage was changed just 3 weeks ago. Changed? How? The new policy amendment specifically excludes fire damage, sir. That's impossible. I shouted into the phone, bolting upright. I never changed my policy. I specifically confirmed fire coverage. Well, we have the signed paperwork right here, sir, the agent insisted apologetically. Signed by you. I demanded they email me the document immediately. One glance at the signature told me everything I needed to know. It was a crude forgery. Not even a good one. They hadn't even tried hard to mimic my handwriting. Betrayal, cold and sharp, twisted in my gut. The official fire investigation team called 2 days later. Mr. Blackwood, we found definitive evidence of tampering with your main circuit breaker, the lead investigator stated grimly. Someone deliberately overloaded your system from the outside access panel. This wasn't an accident, sir. This was arson. I wasn't surprised. Deep down, I already knew. The inspection, the concerned neighbor, the forged insurance document, it all pointed one way. I hired a top private investigator. Within days, he uncovered the truth. The emergency inspection was based on a completely fabricated complaint about a non-existent gas leak, concocted by Brenda Sterling herself. She had used it as a pretext to gain access to my home. Security footage from David Chen's doorbell camera, angled perfectly across the street, captured Brenda and two known board members entering my house that fateful morning, carrying tools totally unnecessary for any legitimate inspection. The final piece snapped into place when my investigator discovered that Mark Sterling's newly formed development company had recently filed preliminary inquiries with the city about rezoning possibilities, specifically for my 3-acre lot, the largest and most desirable in all of Pinecrest Gardens. A multi-unit luxury development on my land would make them millions. Armed with this mounting evidence, the PI's findings, the arson report, the forged signature, the video of the board meeting, I tried going back to the police, but the path to justice seemed deliberately blocked. Brenda Sterling's husband, it turned out, was a retired police captain with deep, lingering connections within the department. My case was inexplicably deprioritized. The district attorney's office frustratingly claimed there simply wasn't enough conclusive evidence to press charges. 1 week after the fire, I stood amidst the charred skeletons of my former life. Rain began to fall, mingling with the soot and tears on my face as I picked numbly through the blackened debris, desperately hoping to find something, anything, that might have survived the inferno. Nothing. They had taken everything. They thought I would just roll over, accept defeat, crawl away, broken. They had absolutely no idea who they were dealing with. I looked up at the grey, weeping sky. "This isn't over," I whispered, my voice raspy, but filled with a newfound, chilling resolve. Not by a long shot. I turned and walked away from the ruins of my dream home, never looking back. The man who had lived there, the trusting homeowner, the grieving widower, that man died in the fire. The person who emerged from those ashes was someone new, someone with absolutely nothing left to lose, and someone with the resources, the intelligence, and the burning desire to make those responsible pay dearly for what they had done. Brenda Sterling thought she'd won. She thought she'd broken me. She was about to learn her biggest mistake wasn't burning down my house. It was leaving me alive to seek justice. $6 million? My longtime banker asked, his eyes wide behind his spectacles. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Arthur, are you absolutely certain you want to liquidate these specific assets on such incredibly short notice? The penalties alone—" "Yes," I cut him off firmly, my voice devoid of hesitation. "And I need it done today. Wire transfer instructions are here." There was no room for doubt, only icy resolve. I had spent every waking moment of the week following the fire, learning everything I possibly could about the Pinecrest Gardens HOA. What I discovered shocked even my cynical, newly forged self. The HOA wasn't truly run by the residents at all. It was merely managed, or rather manipulated, by Evergreen Community Management, a large, private corporation that handled dozens of neighborhoods across the state. The homeowners, the board members, like Brenda, they had almost no real power. Brenda was just a puppet, drunk on petty authority, carrying out Evergreen's implicit directives or what she thought they wanted, while believing she was the one pulling the strings. The real decisions, the real financial trails, the real liability, it all originated higher up. If I wanted true revenge, true justice, I needed to aim higher. Evergreen Community Management was privately held by a small, shadowy group of investors. And as luck, or perhaps fate, would have it, one of those investors was looking to quietly sell his substantial 30% stake. It wasn't a controlling interest, not yet, but it was more than enough to get my foot firmly in the door. And $6 million was exactly the asking price. The purchase was executed swiftly and silently through a newly created shell corporation my attorney set up overnight. Absolutely nobody knew I was the buyer, not the seller, not the other investors, not the executives at Evergreen. I needed the element of surprise. It was my only remaining weapon. While the purchase was being finalized electronically, a certified letter arrived at my temporary rental apartment. It was from the Pinecrest Gardens HOA, demanding I clear the unsightly debris from my burned-out property within 10 days or face daily fines of $500. It was signed, with a flourish, Brenda Sterling, HOA president. The sheer, unmitigated audacity stole my breath. That letter wasn't just an insult, it was an invitation I intended to accept. 3 days later, Pinecrest Gardens residents packed into the community center for another emergency HOA meeting. The hastily announced agenda? Discussing the unfortunate fire incident at 1024 Whispering Pines Lane and exploring community beautification plans for the affected lot. I slipped in quietly through a side door and took an unobtrusive seat in the back row. No one paid me much attention. I was just the grieving guy whose house had tragically burned down. Perfect. They were all focused on Brenda, standing confidently at the podium, pearls gleaming under the harsh, fluorescent lights. As we all know, Brenda announced, her voice resonating with false sympathy, the Blackwood property has sadly become an eyesore, a blight on our beautiful neighborhood. She clicked through a dramatic slideshow showcasing the devastation of my home. The insurance situation appears complicated, she continued vaguely, but we simply cannot allow this blight to negatively affect our property values any longer. David Chen, looking uncomfortable, tentatively raised his hand. Shouldn't we perhaps wait? Give Arthur a chance to figure things out, to maybe rebuild? The man just lost everything. Brenda's practiced smile didn't reach her eyes. Unfortunately, Mr. Blackwood appears to have failed to maintain adequate insurance coverage, she lied smoothly. And frankly, while tragic, this presents us with a unique opportunity. She paused for effect. Therefore, I propose we use a portion of the Community Reserve Fund to purchase the lot from Mr. Blackwood, at a fair, assessed price, of course, and create a much-needed neighborhood park and playground. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd, some approving, some uncertain. I felt my blood boil. They weren't just content with burning me out. Now they were planning to steal my land, using community funds while I was still reeling from their attack. And, Brenda continued, beaming, clicking to the next slide, I've prepared the perfect design. My brother's development company, Sterling Development, has generously offered to handle the construction management at cost as a service to the community. The image that appeared wasn't just a park. It showed a small playground strategically tucked into a corner, surrounded by plans for several expensive, multi-story townhomes. This wasn't a community park. It was a thinly veiled development plan with a token swing set. That was my cue. I stood up slowly, deliberately. I have a question, I said, my voice calm but carrying clearly across the suddenly silent room. Every head turned towards me. Brenda's face drained of all color when she finally recognized me standing there. Mr. Blackwood? She stammered, visibly flustered. We didn't expect you to attend. Clearly, I replied dryly, walking steadily toward the front of the room. I'm curious about something, Brenda. Under exactly what authority does this HOA plan to purchase my property? Because I can assure you, I haven't put it up for sale." She recovered quickly, her mask of authority snapping back into place. "The HOA bylaws, Mr. Blackwood, clearly allow for property acquisition when an owner abandons their responsibilities or allows their property to become a significant nuisance. You haven't cleared the debris, despite our official notice." "An interesting interpretation," I said, nodding thoughtfully. "But there seems to have been a rather significant change in management recently that might just affect those plans." "What on earth are you talking about?" Brenda snapped, losing her composure. I pulled a thick folder from the leather briefcase I carried. "This," I announced, holding up official-looking documents. "3 days ago, through a private transaction, I purchased a 30% stake in Evergreen Community Management." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. For those unaware, Evergreen is the corporation that owns and directly manages this HOA and dozens of others. And I began handing copies of the purchase agreement and stakeholder registration to the stunned board members at the front table. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Karen snatched the papers, her hands visibly shaking as she scanned the first page. This can't be real," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Oh, it's very real, Brenda," I replied, my voice hardening, "and as the single largest shareholder of Evergreen Community Management, I have already called an emergency meeting of Evergreen's corporate board for tomorrow morning. My first official order of business will be initiating a complete, independent, forensic audit of all HOA finances, activities, communications, and contracts for the past 5 years, including, naturally, a very close look at the highly suspicious circumstances surrounding the fire at my home." The blood drained completely from Brenda Sterling's face, leaving it a sickly, chalky white. You can't do that." "Actually, I can, and I will," I stated flatly. I turned then to address the stunned residents directly. For years, this HOA, under the management of Evergreen and the influence of certain individuals, has bullied and exploited homeowners. They've selectively enforced rules, issued arbitrary and punitive fines, engaged in conflicts of interest, and quite possibly committed serious criminal acts, including conspiracy and arson. That ends now." Linda Chen stood up abruptly, tears streaming down her face. "They forced us out. They forced us to sell our house last year with those ridiculous escalating fines we couldn't possibly pay. We had to move in with our daughter." Suddenly, the dam of silence broke. Others began standing up, sharing their own nightmare stories. Elderly residents forced to pay exorbitant consulting fees directly to Brenda to avoid violations for non-existent problems. Families harassed relentlessly with trivial citations until they sold their homes in desperation, often below market value, directly to Mark Sterling's company. "This is slander, lies," Brenda shouted, trying desperately to regain control. "The board won't stand for this blatant intimidation." I allowed myself a small, cold smile, the first genuine expression I'd felt in weeks, albeit one forged in anger. "The board doesn't have a choice, Brenda. As of tomorrow morning, I will begin the process of completely restructuring Evergreen's management team and policies. Anyone found to have engaged in illegal or unethical activities will be immediately terminated and reported directly to the State Attorney General's office and all relevant authorities." Brenda lunged toward me then, pure rage contorting her features, but her husband quickly grabbed her arm, holding her back. "You'll regret this, Blackwood," she hissed, her voice venomous. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." I leaned in close, my voice low and intense, ensuring only she could hear. "No, Brenda, you have no idea who you're dealing with. You took everything from me. Now I'm going to take everything from you, legally, methodically, and completely. I straightened up and addressed the buzzing room again. I invite all residents who wish to see transparency and accountability restored to attend tomorrow's Evergreen Community Management Corporate Board meeting. The location will be posted on the community bulletin board tonight. It's high time this community was governed honestly and fairly. As I walked out of the community center, people surrounded me, shaking my hand, clapping me on the back, eagerly sharing their own HOA horror stories, their voices filled with a mixture of relief and newfound hope. For the first time since the fire, I felt something other than the consuming weight of grief and the burning desire for revenge. I felt purpose. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my private investigator. Got it. Found definitive proof linking Sterling to the arson. Chief Building Inspector confirmed external circuit breaker was deliberately tampered with before the fire was set internally. Also have clear video evidence of Mark Sterling trespassing on your property the day of the fire, shortly before it started. Sending files now. Justice, it seemed, was finally beginning to turn its wheels. Brenda Sterling thought burning down my house would break me, silence me. Instead, she had inadvertently handed me the matches to burn down her entire corrupt world. Tomorrow was just the beginning. Over the next 3 intense weeks, I immersed myself in the tangled, murky records of the Pinecrest Gardens HOA and its parent company, Evergreen Management. The picture that emerged was even uglier and more predatory than I had initially suspected. Brenda, often with the tacit approval or willful ignorance of certain Evergreen executives who benefited from inflated management fees tied to fines and property turnovers, had systematically targeted vulnerable residents, particularly the elderly, on fixed incomes. She threatened them with crippling fines for imaginary violations unless they paid her exorbitant off-the-books consulting services on how to fix the non-existent problems. The audit confirmed she had personally forced at least 6 families out of their homes through this ruthless campaign of manufactured debt and excessive fines, paving the way for her brother, Mark Sterling, to acquire their properties at rock-bottom prices. Using the resources now at my disposal as a major Evergreen shareholder, and fueled by a righteous anger, I immediately directed my legal team to help these victimized families. Our first priority was the Kaplans, a sweet elderly couple who had lost their modest retirement home, the home they'd lived in for 40 years, due to Brenda's trumped-up charges about unapproved landscaping. We tracked down their old house, which Mark Sterling had been renting out, initiated legal action citing fraud and duress, and within 2 weeks presented the Kaplans with the keys. We never, ever thought we'd see our home again, Mrs. Kaplan wept, squeezing my hand tightly, her husband speechless beside her, tears rolling down his cheeks. Witnessing their tearful return, the sheer relief washing over them felt more satisfying than any act of pure revenge could have. The Chens were next. We uncovered proof that the unauthorized landscaping Brenda had fined them into foreclosure over had actually been explicitly approved in writing by the previous HOA board. Armed with this evidence, we nullified the foreclosure sale to Sterling Development, which had conveniently left the house empty, and helped David and Linda move back into their family home. "I still can't quite believe you did all this, Arthur," Linda said, her voice thick with emotion, as we helped carry their furniture back inside. "Most people in your situation would have just taken the insurance money and moved far away." "I'm not most people," I replied simply, watching their 2 young children run excitedly through the familiar rooms, reclaiming their old bedrooms with shouts of joy. As the forensic audit deepened and the state investigation intensified, Brenda Sterling's network of cronies began to crumble. faced with potential criminal charges themselves, one by one, her allies on the HOA board, and even within Evergreen's mid-level management, started turning against her, providing investigators with sworn affidavits and incriminating emails in exchange for immunity or reduced charges. Her brother, Mark, facing undeniable evidence of trespassing and conspiracy related to the arson, quickly cut a deal, admitting to tampering with my electrical system after Brenda let him into my house during that bogus safety inspection. 2 other board members confessed to knowingly helping cover up similar predatory schemes against other homeowners over the years. Perhaps the most shocking discovery came when investigators, executing a search warrant, found Brenda's private computer files. She hadn't just been targeting individual homes for her brother. She'd been meticulously planning to force out enough homeowners in a specific contiguous block, including my former property, to allow Mark Sterling to petition the city for a major rezoning variance. Their ultimate goal? To demolish the existing homes and construct a large, multi-million-dollar commercial shopping complex right in the heart of our quiet residential neighborhood. The kickbacks and profits would have made them obscenely rich, while completely destroying the character and value of Pinecrest Gardens for everyone else. The sheer scale of her greed was staggering. My phone rang as I reviewed these sickening documents late one evening in my temporary apartment. It was the lead detective handling the criminal case. "Mr. Blackwood, just wanted to let you know," he said formally, "we've made the arrests. Brenda Sterling, Mark Sterling, and 2 former board members are in custody. Arson, fraud, extortion, conspiracy. The list is long. And frankly," he added, his voice softening slightly, "based on the evidence you helped uncover, we're finding potential victims and similar patterns in other neighborhoods where Mrs. Sterling previously served on HOA boards or consulted. This rot runs deep. How did no one catch on to this before?" I asked, weary but vindicated. I looked out my apartment window toward the distant, dark silhouette where my home once stood, soon to be rebuilt. "Because people are afraid to fight back," I answered my own question quietly. "They feel powerless. They don't realize how much power they actually have when they stand together." The question lingered in my mind. Had I used my newfound power purely for justice, or had a healthy dose of revenge fueled my relentless pursuit? As I prepared, not just to rebuild my own home, but to completely overhaul Evergreen management and help Pinecrest Gardens heal and rebuild itself from the ground up, the lines felt blurred. 9 months later, I stood on the fresh green lawn where my burned mansion once stood, the scent of newly poured concrete sharp in the autumn air. Construction crews bustled around, expertly framing the walls of my new home. It felt good, hopeful. "Mr. Blackwood, got a minute?" Sophia Rodriguez, the dynamic, newly elected HOA president, jogged energetically across the street, clipboard in hand. Unlike Brenda, Sophia took her volunteer job seriously, using her position to genuinely help neighbors, organize community events, and ensure transparency. "Just finalizing the layout for the Community Fall Festival next weekend," she announced brightly, showing me colorful diagrams filled with booths for local artisans, a pumpkin patch, and even a pie baking contest. "We've got over 30 families confirmed already. Can you believe the turnout?" I smiled, a genuine, easy smile this time. It was a far cry from the fear and suspicion that had permeated Pinecrest Gardens under Brenda Sterling's reign, when neighbors were often too afraid to even talk to each other for fear of being reported for some imaginary infraction. Now, kids played freely together in yards, without their parents constantly worrying about violation notices. Impromptu block parties seemed to happen almost weekly. The criminal trials had concluded 3 months prior. Brenda Sterling received an 8-year prison sentence for arson, conspiracy, fraud, and multiple counts of extortion. Her brother Mark got 5 years for his role in the arson and conspiracy. The 2 complicit board members took plea deals involving probation and hefty restitution payments to the families they had helped victimize. The local news dubbed it the HOA scandal that rocked the suburbs. The scandal sent shockwaves far beyond Pinecrest Gardens. Homeowners across the state and even the country, inspired by our story, started questioning their own HOA boards, demanding greater transparency, fair enforcement, and accountability. It felt like we had inadvertently sparked a small movement. "Mr. Blackwood?" Sophia's voice pulled me back to the present. "Just confirming, are you still planning to host the annual holiday gathering in your new place this year? Assuming it's ready, of course." "Absolutely," I replied warmly. "The entire East Wing is being designed specifically for community events, meeting spaces, a small library, even a large kitchen for those cooking classes Mrs. Kaplan wants to teach. Construction is on schedule. It should be ready by early December, weather cooperating. My new mansion would be, if possible, even more beautiful than the original. But it would be different. Significantly different. The sprawling gardens, once my private sanctuary, would incorporate designated areas open for neighborhood walking tours once a month. Helen's beloved roses, salvaged and carefully nurtured by neighbors after the fire, were now part of a collaborative neighborhood beautification project, their vibrant colors symbolizing resilience and community spirit. As Sophia hurried off to rally more volunteers, I noticed David Chen watching from his driveway across the street. I walked over. "It still feels strange sometimes, doesn't it?" he asked quietly, leaning against his mailbox. "Just having normal lives again. No looking over your shoulder." "We're getting there," I said, nodding. "How's the new job going?" After moving back, David had initially struggled to find work in his field. I'd connected him with my own company's HR department, and recognizing his skills and integrity, they'd hired him to head our expanding community outreach program. "It's amazing, Arthur. Truly," he beamed, his face lighting up. "We just got approval last week to expand the tech education initiative into 5 more underserved middle schools. It feels good to be making a difference." The rumble of a large moving truck down the street caught our attention. The last of Brenda Sterling's known allies, a couple who had actively supported her schemes, was finally leaving Pinecrest Gardens today. Not because anyone forced them out. In fact, several neighbors, including the Chens, had genuinely offered them olive branches, chances for a fresh start within the reformed community. But shame, it seemed, was a powerful motivator. They couldn't handle living amongst the people they had wronged or enabled. "Did you ever imagine back then that it would turn out like this?" David asked thoughtfully, gesturing around the transformed neighborhood. The repaired homes, the newly planted community garden, the general sense of peace and neighborliness. Truthfully, I hadn't. When I bought the controlling stake in Evergreen Management, my primary motivation had been raw, burning vengeance. I wanted to make Brenda Sterling and everyone complicit pay for destroying my life, my home, my memories of Helen. But something unexpected, something transformative, had happened along the way. In the process of dismantling the corrupt system, of seeking justice for myself and the other victims, a true community had unexpectedly emerged from the ruins. People started talking again, helping each other, trusting each other. The shared experience, the fight against a common antagonist, had forged bonds stronger than any HOA bylaw. The former Sterling Property Development Company which I had acquired as part of the legal settlements during Brenda's trials, had been completely restructured. Instead of building luxury condos, it was now focused on developing affordable housing initiatives and revitalizing struggling neighborhoods in nearby communities that desperately needed investment and help. Revenge, I discovered, wasn't nearly as fulfilling or lasting as rebuilding, as creating something positive out of the wreckage. That evening, I hosted an impromptu dinner for several neighbors right there on my construction site. We set up folding tables and chairs near where my grand kitchen would eventually stand, grilling burgers on a portable grill, sharing stories and laughter as the sunset painted the sky in breathtaking shades of pink and gold. "A toast," called out Mrs. Kaplan, raising her glass of lemonade high, "to second chances and to good, kind neighbors, and to standing up to bullies wherever you find them," added Linda Chen, who now enthusiastically headed the reformed Neighborhood Watch program. Clinking glasses and warm agreement echoed around the makeshift table. Later, as my guests were helping clean up, packing away the grill and folding chairs under the bright construction lights, a sleek black sedan pulled quietly up to the curb. A woman I recognized stepped out, Jessica Bell, the investigative reporter who had extensively covered the HOA scandal for the city newspaper. "Sorry to interrupt your evening, Mr. Blackwood," she said apologetically, "but I thought you'd want to know. My editor just told me 3 more HOAs in neighboring counties are now under official investigation by the state attorney general, based directly on tips and evidence that came flooding in after your story initially broke. Your experience, what you did here, it really has sparked a movement." I wasn't entirely surprised. After the trials concluded, I had used a significant portion of the recovered funds and personal assets to establish a non-profit legal aid fund specifically for homeowners battling corrupt or abusive HOA boards across the country. We'd already helped families in nearly 30 states initiate investigations and fight back. As darkness fully settled and my neighbors headed home, I walked the perimeter of my future home alone. The powerful construction lights cast long, dramatic shadows across the framing, hinting at the grand entrance hall, the library, the community wing yet to come. Was it all worth it? The pain, the loss, the fight? I looked at the sprawling construction site where my new life and the life of this community was actively taking shape, surrounded now by neighbors who had become genuine friends. And I knew the answer without a shadow of a doubt. The HOA, driven by greed and corruption, tried to burn down my world. But instead, they inadvertently gave me the unexpected opportunity, the motivation, and the resources to build something far more valuable, far more meaningful than just a mansion. They gave me the chance to help create a true home, not just for myself, but for an entire community that learned to stand together, emerging from the ashes stronger, more connected, and more resilient than ever before. This story is a powerful reminder that even when faced with devastating loss and seemingly insurmountable corruption, resilience, determination, and the courage to fight back can lead not only to justice, but to positive transformation. It highlights the danger of unchecked power and greed, but also showcases the incredible strength found in community solidarity. Never underestimate your own power or the power of neighbors standing together for what's right. What would you have done in this situation? Have you ever faced challenges with an HOA? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And if you found this story compelling, please consider subscribing for more content.